Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Banjo-Kazooie. In the last part, we started off and took care of a lot of Freezeezy Peak, and now we're gonna go finish up what we can take care of for now, because as I mentioned last part and the part before that, until we get the new move that's present in the world after this, Gobi's Valley, we actively can't get the 10th Jiggy here, because we need that to actively win the second race against Boggy on the sled. So at this point, we're in Wazza the Walrus's cave, and if you actively go into the little walrus-sized hole on the side there, you can get the second honeycomb piece for Freezeezy Peak. Worth noting though, when you first actually enter this place, Wazza does say some lines, but they're not in this footage, because what I'll often do in loading screen transitions here and again across my LPs is I will enter a room, immediately leave it, and check my notes to make sure I have everything up to date and know where I'm going next, just in case I forget minor details. That was one of those cases where I did that, and because that, the lines didn't get a chance to actively show up on screen at all, so, whoops. With that, we're now actually done with Walrus Banjo, so I'm gonna have Mumbo transform me back into Banjo proper, but then we're immediately gonna go back to Wazza's cave, because there's something we can only reach with Banjo proper. How you doing again, Wazza? Oh, the bear again! Take that noisy orange thing with you, and leave poor Wazza alone! And here is where the 5th Jinjo is for Freezeezy Peak. But you might notice, there's something beyond where the Jinjo is. There's a giant key in there made of ice. This is the first opportunity I have to talk about something called Stop-N-Swop, which was a planned mechanic for the N64 versions of Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. Effectively, there are 7 items here in Banjo-Kazooie, that ice key in there and 6 colored mystery eggs, that you need cheat codes to access. The only way we know about most of these cheat codes is via hacking. For instance, in order to get that ice key, you need to get over to the Treasure Trove Cove Sandcastle and enter cheat. Now you can see a nice ice key, which you can have for free. The original plan is you would collect these items via some way here in Kazooie that would have been revealed when Tooie originally released. And you'd be able to effectively hot swap the cartridges using an early hardware flaw in the N64 where RAM wasn't cleared for a couple seconds after you take a cartridge out. So in effect, you would collect the item here in Kazooie, take the cartridge out, put the Tooie cartridge in, and unlock something in Tooie doing that. But Rare ultimately canceled development on that feature after Nintendo specifically asked them to do so, off the top of my head, citing, I believe, potential damage to the hardware or software, as well as later revisions of the N64 probably removing that RAM loophole they were going to use for it as it was. With that said, Stop-N-Swop is technically still alive in the modern day, as the Xbox Live Arcade versions of Banjo-Kazooie and Tooie, as well as I believe the Rare Replay versions of the game, allow you to access those items to A, get a notable upgrade in Banjo-Tooie, but also for extra bonuses in Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. I'll note where the other eggs are as we go through the game. We've actively technically seen where one of the mystery eggs was already. Specifically, you might have noticed that island with the sign on it back in Treasure Trove Cove that I specifically pointed out. That is where the pink mystery egg is. You can get that island to raise by inputting the cheat code cheat. Out of the sea, it rises to reveal more secret prizes. Stop-N-Swop is definitely an interesting idea and a very unique relic to these games' development cycles, but I'm ultimately very glad it never got fully implemented in the N64 releases, because I feel like a lot of people probably would have messed up in some form of executing it and either damaged their game, their console, or otherwise. It's probably for the best it didn't work out the way it did. But that said, I believe there's also certain clips you can do to get at least to the ice key and the like. So at this point, we move past the note door that was directly next to the entrance to Freezeezy Peak, and wouldn't you know it, the puzzle for our next world is directly in this room as it is. With this, we can now access Gobi's Valley. Like I mentioned prior to Freezeezy Peak, this part of the game is a little bit unique in that you can technically do Freezeezy Peak or Gobi's Valley in either order, as long as you have enough notes to open that door. And both worlds have a Jiggy that requires a power-up from the other, so you could actively go out of the way to do Freezeezy Peak first and then just wait to get the move from Gobi's Valley to get the last Jiggy there. Or you could do the opposite and go to Gobi's Valley and just wait to get the 10th Jiggy there until you do Freezeezy Peak. And there's a part of me that really appreciates that, and again, like I believe I said last time or the time before that, I'm very glad it only happens the once, and it's more of a choice factor rather than what they do in Banjo-Tooie, where it's like half the design philosophy with Jiggies in that game. In order to access Gobi's Valley itself, though, we do need to break down this wall and grab these waiting boots, because there's superheated sand between where we are and where the entrance is. And, well, that'll damage us outright, just like the cold water will back in Freezeezy Peak or the piranha water over in Bubble-Gloop-Swamp. So we just need to get across like this. I guess in a lot of regards, you could look at the middle third of this game as like the hazard water sector of the game, kinda, because almost every single one of the worlds has some form of that. Grunty's best friend at which school was the awful saggy Maggie. I mean, hey, good on her for having long-lasting friendships. When relaxing, she usually reads Big Butts and Guts magazine. Grunty admits she's a hog. I really need a big hot dog. Ooh, that sounds really tasty right now, actually. While sipping a glass of her favorite camel spit milkshake. Kind of awkward with a break there with Grunty saying a line, but Brentilda will sometimes lead from one little fact about Grunty directly into another as part of the same statement. Kind of leads to an awkward point there when I have to do a jump cut because of me writing down the note I just got. With that said, welcome to Gobi's Valley. And there's actually an important pickup right off the bat. Immediately behind where you teleport in is our first Jinjo. I won't lie, my first playthrough, that took me forever to find because I just didn't think it'd be directly behind me. Trunky wants me. How's your nuts, bark breath? Kazooie. Will eggs and feathers help? No. Need water. Help. So Trunkers we need to hydrate at some point, but we can't quite do so yet, so we just need to look around. Gobi's Valley is probably the first world in the game that I don't exactly vibe with. If only because I think it's the second most samey structure-wise level in the game. Because if you look around from a first person's perspective, there's largely like 3 or 4 major buildings around here. Half of the Jiggies in this world are within those worlds, so you need to find the switch, open it, get in there, and do the thing. While it's not the samiest level in the game, it definitely sticks out of my head for that structure alone. So the first thing we actually want to do here, now that we're in the main brunt of the level, though, is go over here to get the only move in this world. These are the running shoes. Beaky wears them on her scrawny feet to make her run really fast for a limited time. Well played, Banjo. You've now learned all the moves in the game. So while there are 9 main worlds in the game, if you actively investigate every world to its fullest up to that point, you'll have every move in the game by the end of World 6. There's a part of me that's always kind of split on how I like things like that being handled in games. There's times where I wish you keep getting abilities up until like the second to last area of the game. But in a 3D platformer, I think it's best to have everything by about the halfway to 2/3 point, if only because then they can really just start fine-tuning the level design to give you harder and harder challenges with the maxed out moveset. And even then, if you think about the game from this angle, between the remaining Mumbo transformations and the Cheeto page cheat codes that increase your ammunition for like blue eggs and the like, there's still plenty for you to actively get throughout the game. So the running shoes, get this, you move fast. You're not invulnerable to damage or hazards like water, but the speed allows you to get around a lot of them much more easily, as well as doing things like grabbing that Jiggy. No, I've had that 1,000 years. Well done, mortal. The way that Jiggy there works is that if you don't have the running shoes and you get too close to that hand, it just retreats into the ground, and I think either moves elsewhere on the platform or waits until you leave the platform to respawn. But with the running shoes, you can just get right up and nab it before it even has a chance to react. Oh, that's something I'm not sure if I've actively talked about yet. If it's a power-up that you put on, like the wading boots or the running shoes, if you take a hit from an enemy while you're putting them on, you're probably going to have the effect canceled. And I think sometimes they'll just cancel the power-up outright in the case of the wading boots. Not exactly sure if that's still the case with the running shoes, but that's because I really seldom get hit with them. But at the same time, there's also very few times the running shoes are actively used, is the best way to put it, I think. Because let's see, we use them here. We use them back in Freezeezy Peak for the one Jiggy that we're missing there. We use them in the next world after this. And I don't think they're in the last 2 worlds after that at all in my memory. I might just be forgetting, or maybe they're more for an optional side thing like an extra life or something, but yeah, you'd really run out of uses of them pretty quickly. Oh, also worth noting, Gobi's Valley is the first world that actively throws what are technically invulnerable enemies at you. Those mummy hands, there's going to be some straight up standard mummies in some of these pyramid areas, there's going to be some ghosts later on and skeletons. You can potentially stun them with normal attacks, but you can only actively destroy them if you use a golden feather to use your Wonder Wing ability. Which means if you're starting to run low on golden feathers, some of these areas might be more annoying than otherwise, and it can be kind of rough. Speaking of kind of rough, this is probably the strictest timer in the game with maybe one other exception. We need to hit that switch at the bottom of this pyramid and get up here to this hole before it closes. You can technically get in while it's closing, but more often than not, if you get there after the timer has ended, you're not getting in time. This timer is strict because you gotta wind all the way around the pyramid to do this. And there are some minor shortcuts you can take, like jumping from the top of one ramp over onto the platform you're heading up to, keeping to the interior of the pyramid where you have the smallest lap and all that. But pretty much every single time I do this world, I make this thing within less than 5 seconds remaining, if not 0 seconds outright. It's really tight compared to every other timer in the game. Yeah, look at that. You could even see me start to move up for a brief second there as the door started carrying me back up. Once you're in here, though, you just gotta grab the Jiggy, and the door there will open, which will then take the water in this pyramid and flood the central area of the world, allowing us to access a couple of other things. These are the mummies in question, by the way, that you can also only damage if you use the Wonder Wing outright. For the moment, though, while we're on to our next objective, let's go back to talking about the game's staff really quick. The next role we haven't talked about yet in the game's development staff is the additional software engineering or other keyboard tapping. That was done by Mark Wilson in this game's case. They actively started as an additional programmer on the original Donkey Kong Country as well as the arcade version of Battletoads. They were the assistant head programmer for DKC2, and then they were the head programmer for Donkey Kong Country 3. After working on this, they were on the team for Banjo-Tooie, they were a CI tech for Perfect Dark, software team for Grabbed by the Ghoulies, and after that, it's a lot of ports until they were on the software team for Viva Pinata, and then after that, they stayed with Rare all the way to modern day, where they're still technically on the services and operation team for Sea of Thieves. After that is the chief scribbler, who is the art director and lead character artist, Steve Males, who started as a character designer for the original Donkey Kong Country and was an additional character artist for Battletoads and Arcade. Did some character work and animation work for DKC2, were a sprite graphics artist for Donkey Kong Land. But after Banjo-Kazooie, they were on the support team for DK64, main team for Banjo-Tooie, Grabbed by the Ghoulies, they were on the art and graphics team, did art and graphics for Viva Pinata's ports on 360 and Windows. Sega and Sonic All-Stars Racing, they were actively involved on the Banjo DLC character in some form. After that, they were on Connect Sports in its second season, as well as its rivals team, but then they were one of the other people who actively left Rare to help form Playtonic, being a character art director for Yooka-Laylee on the main Playtonic team for Yooka-Laylee and the Impossible Lair, and their most recent projects are Tamarin on the PS4 as a character artist and Clive and Wrench on Windows, where I think they designed a character for that game and gave permission for its use overall in some form. Going back to the game, though, we're now in this pyramid, which you unlock by actively ground pounding the switch on top of it and getting in within the timer's runtime, which is a very short timer, but it's such a short distance it actively kind of balances out. If there is one thing that kind of annoys me about switches in this game in particular, by the way, it's that whenever they have a switch that causes a timer, the timer will often start before you even actively have control again. One of the most obvious cases of this is the pyramid we were in a few moments ago that flooded the moat in the center of the area. The timer to get in there starts at 25 seconds, but 5 seconds of that every time is the small cutscene of the door itself opening up, so you actively more in effect have 20 seconds. Which honestly wouldn't bother me as much if they just started the timer at 20 when you gained control, but I guess their mentality is maybe to show you that there is a timer by default so you're not floundering about for a brief second when you originally gained control. It's a lose-lose situation, honestly, because either it feels really weird by the timer being there and just draining and wasting time before you gain control, or you're just thrown into the timer without a warning, with how this game is currently displayed, at least. Either way, going back to this pyramid, this one contains a 16-tile matching puzzle. Ground pound the tiles to find one of 8 different designs on them, and find the match on the next ground pound if you can. Failure to match just means you gotta repound the tiles till you find the match. Only real fail state here is if the timer runs out, in which case I think you just need to leave and re-enter to start again. Worth noting though, the tiles here always have the same solution. So the yellow Jinjo tiles are always next to each other in that one corner, the other corner always has a blue egg in it, etc. So that's more of a puzzle that's more difficult on a first playthrough. After that, if you haven't even just the slightest bit of memory from your first playthrough, you'll probably remember the solution pretty easily. Before we're done in this corner, though, make sure you come back here and grab the green Jinjo behind that pyramid. I think on my first playthrough, that may have been the Jinjo that took me the longest time to find. Another mechanic that's only really here in Gobi's Valley is magic carpets. They go along a set path, fade, and then start again going another direction, really. But our main goal is this.
It's too hot for Gobi. I need some shade.
Please help me. Sure, let's free you from that with a ground pound. Here's your reward, Bear. Gobi's off to cool down. Huh, mood on that, Gobi. It has been a hot summer up to now. It's currently September 9th, by the way, worth noting. It's only finally just cooling down and good because I've had enough of having to work outside at my job trying to move boxes between a trailer and the shop for what we work on. It's been rough. Gobi has a good day. It's hot enough out there. Maybe we'll see him again at some point, who knows? Next up, after I grab these notes, I believe we finally turn our attention to the water we flooded this moat with. There's a couple things we can do with this. I start by grabbing everything that's underwater itself, which is namely a blue Jinjo, I believe, a Mumbo's token, and several notes around the platform here in the center of the moat. Worth noting, you can actively fall down here ahead of time, but the brambles down here just act as damage. That's why there's flight pads here, so you can have a pretty quick way to get back out. The main thing you want to do after spawning these in, I believe, is that it causes a Sphinx head to show up on the... I think it's the right side of the platform if you're facing it from the front where the steps that climb up to the platform are. Get on top of a platform in front of the Sphinx head and we can shoot eggs in its mouth. 3 will progress the puzzle state here, where upon filling this one up and giving it a good little snack, a pyramid will start rising from the center of this platform here. After that, we just need to continue around the moat here, doing this to more Sphinx heads that spawn in. 3 eggs each, but the platform you can stand on gets smaller, and I think they start moving faster and in wider arcs. This is a case where if you're just trying to aim all the time, you can waste a lot of eggs, but one of the best strategies for aiming in Banjo-Kazooie is to just kind of pick one direction that you know the target moves to, and fire it when it's at that specific location. Lead your shots, effectively. Because in my experience, trying to actively aim at a moving target as it's moving, you'll miss more shots than it's really worth, especially when you can only have up to 100 blue eggs without using the Cheeto page cheat we got over near Bubble Gloop Swamp. Upon feeding all 3 Sphinx heads, the pyramid will be fully risen up out of the platform, and we can enter to do our next Jiggy mission. Worth noting, it doesn't show off in this cutscene, but there's actually a Mumbo token at the very peak of the pyramid. You technically don't need the pyramid there to get that, but it's the easiest way to do so, as you could theoretically just take one of the flight pads here in Gobi's Valley to reach that ahead of time. Also, if there are notes I find weirdly annoying to get in this world, it's the ones here on the banisters of the staircases, because you need to backflip up to get up to them. But they're so thin that you're likely to fall off while grabbing them, and I don't know why, that's just always kind of annoyed me. Though not for nothing, annoying note placement kind of becomes a theme towards the latter third of the game. This is King Sandybutt's tomb. Turn back or face his wrath. You chose not to heed our warning. Prepare to run. Welcome to what's probably the most stressful Jiggy in this world, as we have 60 seconds to solve this maze before we're just instantly killed. Worth noting though, if you come over here to this corner, this is also where the witch switch is located, so you might need to brave this place twice to actually get everything here. That causes that coffin to open, so we can now grab the next Gruntilda's Lair Jiggy. My best advice is to kind of keep yourself towards the left of the area. You could theoretically follow the left wall and do that trick like you can do for a lot of real world mazes, but this is a maze you just kind of gotta feel out, and it can get kind of stressful. No, the bear survived. He's after the king's ancient relic. We're not done here yet, though, just by grabbing the Jiggy. As you can just barely hear right there, there's also a Jinjo in this room, so that's going to be good to get us closer to being done with this world in general. But with that and me leaving King Sandybutt's tomb, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 8, we're going to finish our adventures here in Gobi's Valley before briefly heading back to Freezeezy Peak. See you guys then.